In a world where even the smallest disagreements can lead to arguments, violence, and even death, two brothers tackle the difficult subjects.
uh, TikTok. And I want this conversation, or my intention, and it sounded like you were in agreement, was that we're not talking about TikTok really in terms of the social media universe, more looking at it as to the excitement that some people feel about it and are talking about banning it or restricting it in some ways. So, looking from that perspective, what is your understanding of the situation?
My understanding is that it's a Chinese-based company, and while there doesn't seem to be too much connection to the Chinese government, there may be some. There's the risk, given the political environment over there, that the Chinese government could access that data, and a lot of people are worried that they could be spying on us and um, harvesting our data, I guess. So there's a push to ban it at the federal level and say that I think there's two pushes: one to ban it on government devices, and one to ban it on regular consumer devices.
And there has been some progress in banning it on for some government employees. I think I read it was the Department of Defense, the military have all required their people to take it off. I believe Department of Treasury as well. And then Biden, I think he signed a law that it's also the White House. They've taken it off devices in the White House. And I believe Biden had done something where he wants to go a little more broadly with that limitation of it. There have been some Congress folk who have either talked about putting forward a law that would ban it entirely in the U.S. or have tried to put out a law. And then, of course, Trump was threatening to ban it back when he was in office, but both with the Congress people and with Trump, it didn't actually get to that point. It was just in the talking phases, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think that, and there's legislation to ban it on government devices, and then to ban it for regular devices,
Okay.
or regular consumer devices. But yeah.
And what's interesting is that, I used to pay a lot more attention to the stock market than I do now. And back when I was paying attention, this was back in the mid aughts. Um, there are the major primary markets, primary markets. You have New York, London, Berlin, and one of the other big ones is Hong Kong. And with a lot of companies will, of course, go public where they are based, but sometimes if there's a reason, they'll go public in another market. And a lot of companies that were really striving for international awareness were going public not in Hong Kong, not in Beijing, but in one of the European or American markets, because there is greater transparency in those markets. And there is this aspect of the Chinese society and Chinese governance, in that if the Chinese government knocks on your door as a Chinese company and says, we need access to whatever it is they want access to, you are required to give it to them. You can't go and wait for a court order or anything else like this. And so there was the understanding that a Chinese company in going public in one of the Chinese markets, there was a lack of transparency. There was an opacity because of this fact that the way the government could get involved. And so this is one of the concerns, and this is where I'm going with TikTok, is that the Chinese government could hypothetically knock on the doors of the offices in China and say, we need whatever it is that we want you to give us, and we require you not to tell anybody that you've done this. Now, the American side of the company has tried to, I guess, alleviate fears by saying they're keeping all the data at Oracle, that they're not going to allow that any of the information on American consumers that used TikTok to make its way into China. But then there was some information in this past year where Chinese employees were accessing the information in the Oracle databases in the US and hypothetically could have been passing it off to Chinese government officials. It's all nothing certain. There's no one saying that's happened, but it could have happened.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't give me any comfort if I wasn't really looking for comfort, but it doesn't give me any comfort or belief that if they said, well, we decided to list on the New York Stock Exchange or a European one, if if China can access your building, and they can when you are based in China, then they're going to get access to that information. And it's not like there's some firewall that nobody in China and the federal agents in China, whatever you call them, couldn't just go in there and access the data that's held in Oracle. Like it's available to the people in China, so it's available to the Chinese government. So I have no comfort from some sort of division like that.
Right.
I don't really care either way, but I mean, it doesn't color my thoughts on the rest of it. But you know, but I'm just saying that would make me feel any better about it.
And we'll go to the opinion on it in just a moment, because that is important. You know, what does all this mean? But before we go there, one of the things that's important is, and do my reading on it, at least from my perspective, is that the argument some people are putting forward was that what TikTok has access to on our phones is no different than what any other social media company has access to on our phones. And then some will say, well, yeah, but the Chinese government has access to TikTok. And while this is true, the Chinese government can also buy all of that data from Facebook or Twitter or any of the other social media companies, because all of that information is commercially available. And so then the question comes up, well, why is this important? And right now, today, it's not. But the idea that, let's say that America gets serious about its privacy and we start to adopting some laws that similar to what they have over in Europe, where you don't have that access to information, that these companies can't sell the information, it doesn't become a profit stream for the companies. At that point, then China loses access to the Facebook data and the Instagram data and all the other data, but they still have the backdoor access to TikTok because they are a Chinese company. So at this point in time, there is no huge difference, but there could be down the road a difference.
I guess. I mean, a difference between those two ways of getting data that you illustrated, but you know, I mean, are you just going to I don't know, start controlling any company that's owned by anybody in China or anybody in which they could go create it, you know, if they wanted, they could go create a company in another country, and we'd have to be, and then start a social media or buy a part of a social media company or buy their way in, or I don't know. There's so many different ways they could access the data. I just feel like, yeah, we could probably get rid of the big ones and make it a little bit harder for them, but I don't know. I guess that would make a difference between those two things that you said, but I think there are other ways to get the data.
Now, do you have any social media on your phone?
I have Twitter and Facebook.
Okay. And so you access those on your phone. Do you worry at all about what access it has to you on your phone, or the data that's on your phone?
Not really. I mean, not any more than all the other apps that I have a lot of apps on my phone. Those are two of them. I don't think it seems to me what makes them different is what people put through those apps. I mean, are you suggesting maybe that the social media apps, and you may be right, I don't, but it sounds like maybe you're suggesting the social media apps give those social media companies access to other information on my phone besides that which I put through my social media app?
Well, I'll answer that with a question. You might have heard people talk about this. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, where you talk about something, you ask some questions about a particular product or a service or something, and then you start seeing ads for that based solely on a conversation that happened near your phone. Have you ever had that happen?
I think so. But I think that has happened because what happens is, you know, we're talking about like, holy, why are those ads coming up? And I'm like, did I actually search for something? Was I around somebody that was searching for like, how did that happen? Did it happen because? But once again, that's not social media necessarily. That's probably, I mean, is Google social media? And I don't know which is the app that was listening or if they were listening. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if that was Twitter or Facebook or Google or some other app or just the phone in general. I don't know.
Right. Okay. And so this is one of the things that people worry about is it's, you know, a lot of times the belief is if I close out my Facebook or my, you know, whatever social media, if I'm not on Google at the moment, then they are not moved. They don't have any access to me, to my information, to, you know, my keystrokes on the phone, to the microphone or the camera that's on my phone. And these situations like we're discussing right now do happen. And oftentimes it is worrisome. Which one of the possible apps could be eavesdropping on my conversation? Does the app have to be open? Does it just the fact that the phone is nearby and in standby mode, is it able to then pick up on these conversations? And so in this course, this goes bigger than just TikTok or even social media, but kind of phone usage in general, and limiting how much access you give to some of these services and some of these apps. It's also possible that they can use cookies in your browsing, where it's not just when you're on Facebook, but if you go from Facebook to another website, they can then start to track you across all these other things. And I'm not trying to turn this into a conversation about Big Brother, although we don't have like a commercial, a capitalistic version of Big Brother. I mean, it's not the government that's watching you in this case. It's I'm not sure what we call this one.
Big sister.
Big sister. Okay. But yeah,
Not quite as tough as government, but you know, still got some pull.
Oh, we're gonna get some angrily worded letters on that one.
especially because my big sister beat me up plenty when I was a kid.
Oh yeah,
Hopefully she doesn't listen.
That was a good way to show like the psychological damage that caused you to say such an inappropriate thing.
I'm still pissed.
Yeah, but it does illustrate. You know, we started talking about TikTok and the Chinese government, and now we're talking about some of the commercial aspects. And I'd be curious about people in general. Is one considered worse than the other? Are we upset? We get worried about the government eavesdropping on us, but are we not concerned when Google is eavesdropping on us?
Yeah, people aren't concerned for some reason, and I kind of get why. I mean, you know, there was that big Cambridge Analytica issue that came up, and people, I mean, Facebook hardly missed a beat. It seemed like Cambridge Analytica was harvesting data from Facebook and then selling it and using it for different things. And it came out, and Facebook had allowed it to happen, and people didn't seem to care. It didn't really seem to affect the stock price of Facebook. It was a bit surprising to me, but I think you're right that we're kind of getting off topic. I mean, if the idea is, I guess we've illustrated the point that this kind of stuff happens, and it happens with a lot of different companies. So it can also happen with this company that could conceivably be compromised in some ways or coerced into giving data to the Chinese government. Okay, so do we think that's a serious issue or not? I guess is the question, right?
Yeah. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, I think it should be taken off of. It's a little bit funny to me that it's on government devices to begin with. You know, like what are these guys doing now? And I guess to give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe it's like, well, you have this government phone, and if you're off, you're not working right now, then it's cool. You can look at social media and play games or whatever you want. Because part of me is like, yeah, if it's a government device, don't put social media on it anyway. Now maybe they have to do some stuff like I don't know, do some research on social media. I know, I mean, we're worried about what the Chinese government was going to do, but a ton has come out in the recent past regarding our government and what it did with Twitter and Facebook leading up to the elections, the way they were kind of controlling those social media companies. Like we had our own problems. You know, if we were talking about other problems from the social media companies, I think we got our own here in the U.S., not just the Chinese Communist Party, but also our own government. I don't know how much we want to delve into that, but I would say maybe just take it off the government devices. If they want to, I don't know how much good it's going to do to spy on regular citizens, so I'm not too worried about it. I can't imagine they're that interested. I don't have TikTok, and if I did, there's not that going to be that much for them to find when they, you know, if they are finding ways to compromise the security in general of my device, I would be upset about that. I think we'll probably figure that out over time. I think there's going to be companies that crop up and, give us some monitoring capabilities. There's VPNs right now. There's probably other things that are going to crop up where if people get really worried about that, they could, either buy a service or get a free one that allows us to protect ourselves from spying from the Chinese government. But I'm not too worried about me because I don't think they're going to be spying on me. And if they did, it'd be pretty boring stuff. So I don't think in general I'm too worried about, I don't think it requires, well, I am quite certain that it does not require federal intervention or legislation or anything else for the government to tell us, what we should be doing on our phones in this regard or what TikTok is able to do. I just think that's a big overreach, and I don't think there's a lot of risk there. And if there were some risk, we could probably address it at the time, either through the government, doing something to TikTok, if it came up, or telling us about it, or just, through other businesses cropping up and saying, "Hey, we'll protect you against TikTok and people like them." I hope that kind of explains my point.
Yeah, and it doesn't deviate too far from your perspective on a lot of things when we talk about the government.
Yeah.
So it's worth looking at, I think, the government's interaction, involvement, reaction to some other Chinese companies. When you look at, trying to roll out 5G around the world, I think there were, I don't know if it's changed recently, but at one point there were only two companies that had the technology to do it. One of them being Huawei, which was a Chinese company. And the US said that they would absolutely not allow this 5G from Huawei to come into the US, again, because of this idea that the Chinese government has backdoor access to every single Chinese company that exists. And so we are, to a degree, hamstringing our technological advancement by not allowing this company to come in and do the work. But there is the real concern that the Chinese government could have access to all cell phone activity if they wanted to. Now, we take this over to TikTok, and one of the things that's worth considering, what could actually happen if the Chinese government had access to what's on our phones or to how we use them. And first of all, it's possible to figure out, and we've seen it happen with in other places, just by looking at location data, geolocation, to figure out where this phone has traveled around to the job, to the home, to the office. And so it would be, with a little bit of effort and a little bit of work, you could figure out which phone belongs to, let's say, someone working in Langley, or at some other government facility, and just by using geolocation. And if then Chinese government had access to other things that people are doing on their phone, it becomes possible to get blackmailable material. Let's say that someone has a gambling habit. Let's say that someone is looking at porn, and they're married, or looking at the wrong kinds of porn that they wouldn't want anyone to know about, let alone a spouse, or doing other things that are illegal. Now that person can be blackmailed. Now, if we take all of these devices, or take the TikTok off of all phones that belong to government employees, well, they still have their personal phones, and so they still become blackmailable, or the spouse of someone that works at one of these places. And so there is a risk of people using our personal information for nefarious, for evil reasons. You may be totally in the clear. Maybe you don't do anything that would be blackmailable, in which case kudos to you. But I think that there are other people that perhaps could be, and that would be a worry for some people.
Yeah, I guess, that's kind of I guess that stuff happens. That's the way espionage works, and you have to address that with the people that you hire. And maybe just tell them they can't be on TikTok. But of course, you don't want to be at a certain level of job or career with the federal government. There probably is going to be more, if you're just a low level bureaucrat or something like that, they're not going to be, I don't think they could be too worried about the fact that you have TikTok on your personal phone or not. But they could be certainly talking about it. They could be certainly maybe even monitoring some of their personal devices or something like that. I don't know. It just seems a little bit far fetched that we're like, hey, you guys can't get on TikTok because you work at Langley, and this is a great way for the Chinese government to get control of you in some way. So don't use it. And then they're still these high level people, but they're still willing to use TikTok. I don't know. It just seems a little bit far fetched. I know that this stuff happens. I know that this isn't the only way that, that type of black mailable, that's not a word, but black mailable information can be obtained. Maybe it's a slightly easier one. I don't know, but I don't know. Yeah, it just seems a little bit crazy that we're saying, well, there's a few spies or a few people that work for the CIA or FBI that work at Langley that might, conceivably be doing something bad that might, be obtained through TikTok through the back door by the Chinese government. So nobody can use TikTok. Like, I don't know, it's a bit of a reach for me. I think there's other ways that we could handle this, and maybe they should just be encouraging or coming up with ways to help us to protect our data. I don't even want them to do that, frankly. I wish it would be, the some company that would do it, and maybe they could just talk about the risks of it. Like, we know that there's risks out there, and they would certainly tell the people that work for them about the risks and tell them to avoid those types of things. And they could talk in general about the risks to people and say, encourage companies to come up with ways to protect us. I think that would be better than just saying, well, there's a few people that work at Langley that a few of them might have weird porn habits, so nobody can use TikTok. That is a bit of a reach for me.
Well, I'm sure you've heard the phrase before, and I'm sure other people have as well. If you can't find the product, you are the product, and that probably is not the exact languaging of it, but basically, if you get a service for free, well, these companies are making money. To use a great example, Facebook is quite profitable. And I've never paid for Facebook. I've never paid for anything on Facebook. And yet somehow they're making all this money. Now, the answer as to how they're doing it is obvious. It's advertising. But that's not the only way. Then they also start to track your information, and they try and figure out ways to give you content that aligns with your other activities. And so the more they can target, the more effective it's going to be. And so if we take that same, or take that concept to some of these other things we're talking about here, these companies have access to a lot of information, a lot of personal information, and maybe it's harmless, like your shopping habits for your Weber grill or whatever shoes that you're buying. Maybe it's not a really big deal. Maybe you don't mind the fact that these ads are showing up on your phone as to how that might actually have gotten there. But all of this can be used, or at least the process can be used in more invasive ways. If they're, who knows what else they're listening to? Maybe it's just the harmless conversations. Maybe it's something more. And so maybe the answer is to have stricter privacy rules in place. And of course, that would require the government, the big brother. Get back to Big Brother getting involved and saying what people can and can't have access to, and how they're going to use it.
Yeah, just so interesting to me that we talk about all these, every time it comes to this, it's so interesting to me that, we talk about all these possibilities of all these things that could go wrong. And then you seem to put such faith in the federal government that they're going to be angelic, for lack of a better word, in their use of this power that we want to give them. That they should be the ones to decide what we're able to see and what we're not, what should be private and what shouldn't, which companies should be allowed to come to our country and which ones shouldn't, what the rules are, because they know better, or they're gonna handle it. Not even if they know better, but they're gonna handle it in a way that would be appropriate to us. Because I don't have that confidence. I think, and not to say that the people in government are bad people, just that we all make bad choices from time to time, and government makes bad choices too, and there's just so little recourse when they do. So I don't, it does not give me any confidence to think, okay, we're going to give it over to these guys and they're somehow the good guys. We just, as I said before, this stuff just came out about in the Twitter files about the FBI working closely with, they paid like $3.5 million to Twitter um, because they were taking so much time controlling what was going on at Twitter because they were requiring Twitter to come to these meetings to do different things for them, and they paid them $3.5 million because of all that they were requiring of Twitter. Like they are involved in social media already, and so it doesn't give me any confidence to say, yeah, well, let's put them in charge and help them have them help us to keep us safe. I just don't think they're going to do a good job. And it's not going to be with the worst of intentions or with a lot of malice many times. It's just they're going to make poor choices. Sometimes it will be malicious. Sometimes it's going to be they're trying to do something bad. But I doesn't give me confidence in that regard. I would prefer to say keep it out of the hands of people that work at Langley, talk with them about it, train them on it, and we don't need this protection that they're purportedly going to give us, the federal government's going to give us.
Well, and I hear what you're saying, and I think that there is some truth that the government and everyone else has a long history of overreach. It doesn't matter whether it's you're a politician, whether you're a CEO for a company. Everyone's always trying to go a little bit further than they might be allowed to, pushing the boundaries just a little bit more than they would, and every now and then somebody gets burned. But I think the alternative of doing nothing, of saying we're going to let people know the risks and then they won't make any mistakes, I think that is particularly naive. And when we talk about the federal government's overreach, you gave the example just now of the FBI, and absolutely, there's been a lot of overreach there. And I think at the same time, it's also been blown way out of proportion, but it was overreach. Now, the federal government is more than just the FBI, of course. And when laws are created, hypothetically, not recently, but hypothetically, those laws are created out in the open, and there's public involvement and exchange and intercourse, and then we craft these laws to hypothetically help the most people possible. Does it always happen that way? No. And do laws get made out in public lately? No. But they can be. And so we have the ability then to influence how these laws work, and we're no longer then depending on the trust of the individual that they're going to make the best choices, whether they have TikTok on their phone or not. I mean, if you think, I can give you a great example of why someone would. You've got a parent, a single mother or a single father, and they've got a teenager, a girl, let's say, who is on TikTok, and that parent now wants to keep an eye on their child to see what they're posting, to be able to know what's going on in their child's life, to stay involved in some way. Oh, and by the way, that parent works for the Department of Defense, so they don't have the app on their work phone, but they have it on their personal phone as a way to keep an eye on their child. So it's not because they're a horrible person, but because they're trying to be a good parent. And now, if we said, for example, that the Chinese government could get into some of this data on that phone, or at least even just to find out where they go in their day-to-day activities, they now can. So if there were more stringent rules than just the awareness of how this could go badly, I think then we avoid that type of situation.
Yeah, I don't think we avoid that type of situation is the difference. I think they try to and they make poor decisions. I mean, we've talked about some of the examples here on the podcast in the past, 50 years of no nuclear power in this country because of government intervention. The cleanest energy we could have used, we don't have because of government intervention. And they make poor choices like that all the time. So I think sometimes you say, well, if we do nothing, then that's just naive. It's going to be, we should got to at least try something. But sometimes when you try something, it's the wrong thing. And I think that's the real issue we have here. It's not sometimes we just have to do something. No, we don't. And we've seen time and again how it makes things worse when they do that, when they are overreaching. In this case, we're deciding whether or not they should do something, and I would say no, they shouldn't be doing it. And I think there's a lot of reasons why. And so just to say, well, doing nothing is worse than doing something. No, the something that you're talking about is more dangerous, is more going to create more problems. And
Well,
just to, I mean, there's a great solution for that mother, that single mother that you're talking about. She just leaves she gets a throwaway phone, a burner phone, that she doesn't use for any reason, but to check social media for her daughter, and she leaves it at home all the time. There, problem solved. We could train like that. It would be pretty easy to do that. And I guess what you're suggesting is there's some person that's not going to follow policy because she's trying to be a good mom or whatever. But if she's not going to follow policy, there's probably going to be other areas where this is not the only way that it's like we're trying to put our finger in the dike and there's going to be holes all over the place. This is just one. If she's doing this here, other people are going to be doing other things in other places. There's going to be holes, and I don't think this is an effective way to protect us from the government, from the Chinese government. I just don't. I think it's unnecessary.
Well, actually, when I was illustrating that example, it was more to show why your solution wasn't really effective, because just talking about how things or why this is dangerous and just leaving it at that, an education basically.
I know, and I was poking a hole in your argument and saying, yeah, there's a reason why she would want to use it, and here's the solution: she uses another phone.
Yeah, and then that's a great solution if she only works an 8-hour day and if she only lives 20 minutes away from her house. But if she's working regularly 10 to 12 hours a day and has a 2-hour commute, well, maybe the only time she has, or he, if it's a father, that they have to be involved in their child's lives. So yes, it is a great solution in a perfect situation, and we don't always have perfect situations. I think we can kind of wrap this up and just say that, as usual, you and I are in disagreement as to what the solution to this problem, if there is a problem, and what the solution to the problem might be. I guess there's probably no surprise. It's more surprising when we are in agreement as to whether there's a problem or not, and whether there's a solution or not.
So you are of the opinion that the government should ban TikTok from coming to our country?
I believe that the government should ban it for employees of the government. And I think that the better solution to banning it in general would be to put in some more stringent privacy rules that would apply to all social media companies on all devices. Because, like I said, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, all this information is available to other people if you use your phone to access this information. And a solution for the consumer is to take Facebook and all the other social media apps off of your phone. Some of them you can't take off, but you can force quit them and you can remove your data from them, and then they don't have access to your phone either way. If you must have,
you're not doing that. Like it's a solution for somebody who cares about that, I guess. I think the only thing we've said is we care maybe that federal employees or government employees might be compromised in some way. So they're the ones we should probably be focused on. To your point, like if you're worried about privacy, yeah, you'll have to get rid of all social media and Google.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can choose which apps have access to your phone and your camera, and when they have access to it, you can control that in the settings of your phone, and you can control if you have an app that wants access all the time. In most cases, there's other apps that you can use. Now, obviously, if you're using Facebook or some of the other social media, that's all there is. But it actually, I find it pretty healthy and helpful not to have the social media on my phone, to only use it when I'm at home on my computer, which limits my access to it, which is actually very healthy for my mental state, just to not have access to it in those times. And if you're using Twitter, I would encourage you to look into one of the other variations like Mastodon, and not avoiding the whole issue about Elon Musk and whether he's doing it right or doing it wrong, or whether he's uncovering, the rot underneath. The fact remains that Twitter curates your feed. They decide what you want to have access to. And so in many ways, they're influencing the content that you are exposed to. They're trying to do it in a way that keeps you involved, not because they want to try and educate you or brainwash you. They want to keep you on the app. And so they put this content there in front of you to keep you engaged and to keep you involved. And so you're allowing someone else to decide what you're paying attention to. And these other versions don't.
Isn't that what the Washington Post and the New York Times do?
Yeah, but they also make it very clear. You know, when you have the article and you can decide, do you want to watch, read it, do you not? And as far as the social media companies, they don't even know what they're putting in front of you. All they know is that 95 people that liked the tweet that you liked also liked this other tweet. So we're going to throw this one in front of his eyes as well because these other people liked it as well. And so they're starting to feed you this content just to keep you involved. Now, with the media companies like the Washington Post, they write the articles and maybe there's a reaction based on the comments that go on, but the articles themselves stand alone. They don't lead, well, they could lead you other articles if you're looking for more information and more research, but it doesn't go any further than that. And they are consciously and actively curating the content on their sites, whereas social media is all supposedly algorithms, unless you're Elon Musk, in that case, everybody gets to read Elon Musk's tweets.
Yeah, but you still haven't given me the difference between Washington Post. There's a whole paper of other articles that it leads you to. And maybe they're doing it in a slightly different way because it's not just an algorithm, but they are putting in front of you those things that they think are going to keep that audience happy. I mean, it's very similar. It's very similar how the legacy media does it to. I mean, this idea that you're talking about that is so different because they're curating it. Yeah, they're curating it in a slightly different way, and they have a certain audience that they go to, and that's why you have newspapers that kind of everybody knows this one's a little bit left of center, this one's way left of center, this one's a little more moderate, this one's right of center. Yeah, unsurprisingly, these curated newspapers all are kind of showing you one sort of thing. If you only read the Washington Post, you'd have a very different opinion than if you only read Fox News or the Daily Wire or the Washington the what's the journal, the
Examiner.
no there's the journal,
Wall Street.
the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, I mean it's different, like each of these are very different, so I think there's a lot of similarities there. You're right. We should be aware of that in social media, and it does become a bit of an echo chamber. I think that's a big problem with social media that we should definitely be aware of, but it's one that we don't talk about as much in the legacy media companies.
Well, we can't do it right now because we're out of time. But we could have a compare and contrast between their different ways they have of keeping you engaged and involved. In fact, it might be interesting to do that. But we are at the end of our time. And so we'll talk about whether to do that. I also thought it might be interesting to talk about artificial intelligence. That's been in the news lately as well. But we'll talk about that off screen.
Okay.
Thanks, Colin.
Yeah.
We hope you learned something in this episode of Brother versus Brother, a podcast about difficult conversations. We also hope that you enjoyed it enough to subscribe to the podcast. You can help us by spreading the word. Share this episode on your favorite social media so that others will have an opportunity to experience it as well. You can also support us by donating through Patreon. This information and more can be found on our website, broconvo.com, and on our various social media accounts. Thank you.